Well, good afternoon to those of you in the time zone. Welcome everybody to today's CGS webinar, providing support and guidance to international graduate students in the current policy environment. We have two speakers today. Venkat Alada, Vice Provost of Graduate Studies at the Missouri University of Science and Technology, and Bill Elliott, Director of International and Cultural Affairs, also at the Missouri University of Science and Technology, will lead this webinar session. But before we go into the webinar and the usual the technology slides, I'd like to pass the microphone to Suzanne Ortega, CGS President, to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Hiro, and thank you, colleagues, for joining us for today's webinar. We know that there's no issue that is more center, front, and critical to graduate deans around the country than supporting international graduate students. We know this from the number of you all who have taken the time to join us this afternoon on the webinar. We know it from our pressing issues survey and the attendance at summer workshop meetings. We're so grateful both to CGS staff for making this webinar technically possible, but to our two presenters who will lead us through an important conversation about creating an environment that is inclusive of all of our students. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Suzanne. So just a logistical note about this presentation. So the presenter will talk for about 30 minutes or so, followed by a Q&A session. A webinar recording and the slides, as always, will be emailed to participants and posted on the member section of the CGS website. And then once we get to the Q&A session, please use the please submit a question through the GoToWebinar's control panel. And if you have the technical issues for this webinar, the best way is to go to the support.citrexonline.com and go for the troubleshooting help available there. And if you're having a difficulty hearing us, try switching to a different audio connection. You can change from telephone to microphone to speakers or vice versa without leaving the session. And if you experience trouble with the telephone connection, click problem dialing in for an alternate phone number to dial. Just to give you a little bit of context about today's webinar, of course, as Suzanne mentioned, the support for international graduate students issues that on the many graduate deans' minds right now. And even before the development of the current events, CGS has prepared an immigration policy reform to articulate some of the issues of priority for Council of Graduate Schools as regards to immigration policy with the United States. If you are interested, please visit a public policy and advocacy section of CGS website. And in the public policy resources section, there are 4 issue briefs, and one of them, the fourth one on the list is immigration policy reform, the issue brief. So we encourage you to take a look at some of the policy options that we are discussing. And of course, the CGS president issued statements in response to the 2 versions of travel bans earlier this year, and the Council of Graduate Schools is committed to see that the U.S. graduate schools continue to be open to all qualified and talented students, both domestically and from international the countries. As Suzanne mentioned, these issues of international students coming into the United States has been the particular issue of interest for our member deans. We asked some questions in our pressing issues survey earlier this year, and in May we administered an additional survey to ask about the admission yields of prospective international graduate students this year. And thank you for those of you who participated in this survey. For a quick survey, we had a very good response rate, which shows the amount of interest that this community has. And the result from the admission yield survey is available on our benchmarking website. And in the fall, probably late September, early October, we'll start our annual International Graduate Admission Survey. This will be a very important survey cycle for us to capture the hard numbers around final application counts, offers of admission, first-time enrollment, and the total enrollment of international graduate students at our member institutions and the regional affiliates. So when you receive the email, please do participate. One of the ways that CGS can provide relevant information to member institutions as well as policymakers are through your participation in these benchmarking surveys and having the up-to-date data about what's happening around the graduate schools in the United States, including the flow of international graduate students in this country. So please look out for that email in late September, early October. So, but the most important part that, and probably most effective way for us to communicate, how international students may be supported through this time is through one of your peers and one of your colleagues. So we invited Dr. Venkat Allada and Mr. Bill Elliott from Missouri Science and Technology to talk about their work on providing support and the guidance to international graduate students in the current policy environment. So without further delay, I'll hand the microphone to Venkat and Bill to take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Hiro. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I have Venkat with me via speakerphone, and we're going to test this and see how it works. Venkat, would you like to take our first slide and speak just briefly about the graduate school here at Missouri S&T? Next slide.
Sure, Will. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Venkat Allada, Vice Provost for Grad Studies at Missouri S&T. And I just wanted to talk about very briefly about our Office of Grad Studies, and then Bill will talk about International Affairs, Cultural Affairs Office that they have, and the types of collaborations that we do across various units of our campus for the betterment of our international students. So my office provides centralized services for everything graduate at S&T. We view ourselves as student advocates, student-centric responsive office, and the general functions of our office is about graduate student advocacy, graduate student recruitment, professional development, advising, interpretation of graduate catalogs, the regular stuff. Of course, I'm the faculty advisor to the Council of Graduate Students. This is a student body, graduate student body, recognized by S&T. I meet with them almost every month to talk about various issues relating to graduate students in general, but that also includes quite a bit of international students. Just to give you an idea of Missouri S&T, we are about roughly about 1,900 graduate students with about 650 or so PhD students. Bill, why don't you talk about your office, what your office does, and the number of international students we have on our campus.
Sure. Thank you, Venkat. Next slide, please. I work with the Office of International and Cultural Affairs. I've been at Missouri S&T now for about 6 months. Prior to that, I worked at Eastern Illinois University as its Assistant Dean of Graduate and International Admissions. So it's nice to be speaking with CGS and deans. I think very highly of your organization and the work it does. Being here in the Office of International and Cultural Affairs, our office is a fairly traditional international office. We serve an international population of approximately 1,200 students and scholars, and they fall in both F and J classifications along with their dependents. Our office provides advising services for them, SEVIS entry, cultural affairs, and programming, orientations, all of the things that we normally associate with a successful international office. And it was very critical for me personally when I first arrived here to develop a strong relationship with our graduate school, because they do drive so many of our activities, and their population is so large and makes up so much of our international mission. So I've had the pleasure of working with Venkat now the past 6 months. We've done a number of things that we'll talk about as we move through the presentation, but especially areas of OPT and CPT, working to put those things together and make those more supportive to our international student population. Next slide, please. So I think it's safe to say that our institution was probably as surprised as yours whenever Executive Order 13780 was first implemented. And I think there was quite a bit of surprise and scrambling to address the issue when it first came up. And I was very pleased to see, and especially only being here a few months, especially pleased to see how quickly our school reacted to that. And immediately after the executive order came out, we had a public message of support that was sent out from our chancellor that was crafted by her and by our communications office. From our point of view, once the initial word came out about the executive order, we immediately started looking at ways that we could support our international students, because we had a number of students here from countries who were affected by the executive order. So immediately we put together a panel discussion of our administrators, our chief of police, other folks on campus who work directly with our international student population, just to reassure them that they were welcome at our university, and that we would do everything we could in our power to support them and to work with them to make sense of the new regulations and to make sure that they could stay in compliance with those regulations. So we followed that issue up with putting together lists of resources, places that they could go to get information, the most current information on how this executive order was being implemented. And at the end of this presentation, we've got a list, some screenshots of some websites that we found that were very helpful that we'll share with you. We put together the list of resources. We put together an email list specifically for students who were affected by the executive order. And then based on their feedback, on our student feedback, we put together shortly after that an open forum for international students that was hosted by an immigration attorney who herself was at one point an international student and who was very familiar with the regulations concerning this executive order and what it would take for our students to stay in compliance with that. So we were very fortunate to bring her in. She gave some excellent information to our international population. And that was very much appreciated by our students. They really felt like they were supported well by those activities. A couple of other things that we've done just peripherally to help drive home the fact that we support our students. We participated in the Twitter hashtag #YouAreWelcomeHere campaign. We put together a video for that. And here recently, in regards to some of the negative feedback that we've received from some of our incoming international students who are concerned about their welcome in the United States when they arrive here, we put together a short campus safety video that had alumni, that had our current students, and even our chief of police and some of the other folks on our campus to provide a sense of reassurance and that our students would be welcomed and our students would have a successful experience while here. I've included the links and you could look at those at your leisure. Venkat, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. Next slide, please. So we think as an international office that it's extremely important to be advocates for our international student population, to show support for them, to always be sending messages to our campus and to our community about how important it is that we have robust international enrollments. I think it's probably safe to say that on your campuses, you can find many people who understand the cultural impact that international student populations have and what they bring to classrooms in ways of experience, in ways of international perspective. Those are all very important elements in a successful graduate education. Now, sometimes when dealing with other elements of campus or when dealing with the campus community, Some people are maybe less impressed by those statistics and might be more impressed by the actual economic impact that international students have on a campus and on a community. So I thought it would be beneficial for our audience to share a tool that NAPSA, Association of International Educators, puts out. That's a NAPSA economic value tool. There's a link here, and at the end of the presentation we'll have some screenshots of that. But basically what you can do is look up your particular, you can go as general as the United States as a whole. You can do as specific, you can be as specific as narrowing it down to your actual congressional district, and it will show the number of international students and the schools that they are studying in. And it's an economic value tool that shows not only how much tuition and fees that they are paying into the local economy, but also how many jobs that are supported by those students. And overall, international students in 2015-2016, they contributed over $32.8 billion economically to the U.S., and they supported or created over 400,000 jobs. And so you can dial that down when you're having those conversations on your campus, saying, reaching maybe some folks who aren't as appreciative of the cultural impact that our students have. You're able to go ahead and give them information, real nuts and bolts information about what that means to your university and what that means to your community. So I find it's a very effective tool that seems to really increase the support of our international students to audiences who maybe aren't always as supportive. Also wanted to mention that the Council of Graduate Schools has a program going on now that is CGS Grad Impact. And this program, these are videos and highlights of students at CGS members that are showing the impact that they are having on research, on their community, on their campuses. If I'm not mistaken, I believe even S&T is going to be featured here shortly. But did want to mention that this is a great tool to advocate for our international students and students in general and the impact that they have on our campus. And I don't know, Venkat, maybe you have some experience with this. I would want to say something about this.
Well, as you said, we would be featuring one of our students' work on the graduate impact. And then you are absolutely right. We need to use this platform as a vehicle for advocacy, especially any of the innovative things that our graduates do and the impact on the economic impact and such would be really very helpful.
Moving on with advocacy and support on our campus, some activities that we have taken part in and have pursued. We want to make sure that in all cases we are prepared for dealing with any types of emergency situations, whether it be school closings or actual emergency events that are occurring on our campus. And I think it's important to note this because our international populations are sometimes not as in tune with campus activities as perhaps someone who is a resident of the area. For instance, early this year, our campus was closed because of inclement weather, and we wanted to make sure we had to go out and make sure that our students were well aware of this fact. A few months ago, we had an incident with our nuclear reactor. We had a person who put a package near it that was a suspicious package. And so, of course, we needed to help our international students be aware of the fact that this was going on our campus. We also, and kind of tying in with that, I know both the graduate school and our International and Cultural Affairs office have a very close relationship with our University Police Department. We make sure that they know many of the issues that our international students face. We work with them on a number of endeavors. They know from our leadership team who they need to contact in case something comes up. Sometimes, I know just an example off the top of my head, recently we had an international student who was contacted by someone representing the IRS that said that they had to go out and buy Apple gift cards and give to pay off this supposed debt that they had. And so we worked with UPD to reassure the student that that was not the case, that it was a scammer. Now, we also have a close relationship with different departments on campus, and we have a committee that's called UCARE, which is the University Committee for Assistance, Response, and Evaluation. And this is a group made up of our healthcare providers, our mental health care providers, administrators, and staff members. When we have student issues, whether they be domestic or international students, this is a group that we put together to address case-by-case issues and offer assistance and support and a sharing of knowledge whenever we have student situations arise. So when we look specifically at the graduate school and with the Office of International and Cultural Affairs, as I mentioned, when I first arrived here, I really hoped that I would have colleagues in the graduate school, having come from the graduate school, that I would have colleagues who were great to work with. I couldn't have asked for better folks to work with than our graduate program here. We have a very clear line of communication between our offices. One of the first projects that we worked on, we had feedback from our graduate students that they were not always familiar with CPT and OPT regulations. And so based on discussions with the graduate school, we put together some augmented services to assist them in that process, looking at ways that they could go on and get online assistance through Canvas. We actually put together a short course on how to apply for CPT and OPT, along with a quiz that, when completed and completed successfully, allowed students to have access to the materials that they needed in order to go ahead and apply for those benefits. And again, this all arose from the fact that we work closely with the graduate school and appreciate their feedback and assistance in these issues. We also meet regularly with our graduate school, and our international office meet regularly. We talk about recruitment issues. We talk about admissions policies and ways to make them more friendly for our international students. And our staff and theirs work very closely together when it comes to students, especially in the graduate fields where decisions are made in the programs, and it takes quite a bit more work to get through that admissions process. And I know that Venkat also works quite closely with our student councils, and of course with his student councils, and those have international student representation on them as well. We also engage in a number of activities in our community that really bring our international students to the forefront and make them a celebrated part of our community. And one of the biggest things we do is a town-wide celebration of nations. It's something that brings in really our entire community. There are parades, there are food and things that take place during the weekend. And our Chamber of Commerce actually awarded us their award for Event of the Year this past year because of that great turnout that they've had and the support that the businesses in our community have received from that activity. And Venkat, I'll ask you to chime in with other ways that perhaps we've worked together that maybe I've omitted.
Sure. Actually, Bill, I want to talk about the Celebration of Nations. A lot of our international graduate students actually go on to the K-12 schools as a build-up to that event, Celebration of Nations. They hand out passports, fake passports, and then the kids have to go to various stores and get their passport stamped. Just know more about the country, their culture and such, and the kids find it very, very interesting. And so I thought that was another unique way of engaging international grad students with high schools and K-12.
I agree. It really helps a lot to bring the community in. And I think we're very fortunate here in our community that's a small enough community that we're able to engage in activities like that really help share our cultures and in turn gives us more support as an institution from the community. I also wanted to mention briefly as another show of support for not only international but our domestic students, our Career Opportunities and Employer Relations Office. Of course, this is not only a good recruitment tool, but a good student and scholar service to our students because we have a very active COER office that works and has very close relationships with national and regional employers. And of course, for international students, a big part of their time here in the United States culminates in being able to take part in CPT and OPT opportunities. And we're very fortunate that our COER office helps engage and assists in that process and provides job fairs, 2 job fairs per year. We have over 300 employers, people like Boeing and other large corporations come in, and this gives our students a wonderful head start and a wonderful leg up that allow them to get out and make those connections that they need to get those good CPT, OPT, internship opportunities, all those different things, and help them start their career successfully. And of course, we then follow up with that in our recruitment. When talking to new students coming in, we like to point out the fact that, not only are they going to get a wonderful education at S&T, but we're going to help support them as they start their careers and go out and become successful.
Bill, I just wanted to add one more thing is we had just last year a joint position specifically for graduate students between grad school and the Career Opportunity Center. So this person is exclusively focused on grad students, their placement, their outcomes and such. And we also do a lot of workshops. Apart from regular stuff like the etiquette dinner and such, we had hosted workshops like Dress for Success. And so we also in the COER have a suit closet. And so the thing is, if you don't have a suit, you can walk in and select any suit that you would want. The only requirement that we have is when you return the suit, it needs to be dry cleaned. If you don't have money to dry clean, you can keep the suit. And that has been very, very successful, and people appreciate quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Yes, it again goes back to the fact that we have to show that we support our students and that we have the systems in place that will help them be successful. And I'm very pleased that our institution engages in those activities and has those support services in place. Next slide, please. So one of the issues we wanted to touch on today is, what's in store for us? What's in store for the future? I think many of us are very concerned about the long-term effect of the perceptions that maybe the U.S. isn't as welcoming as it used to be. No matter what your political leanings are, we don't have a lot of control over what other people think of us. And there are a number of studies that are being done now, and of course we'll have quite a bit of data once our fall enrollments have culminated. We'll know exactly where we stand with that. We do know, just incidentally, we've had several communications from incoming students that they are quite concerned about coming to the United States, that they feel like maybe we're less welcoming than we used to be because of the executive order. Also because of some incidents that have occurred. I know there was a fatality in Kansas City involving an Indian student that some of our incoming students specifically mentioned, where they were concerned whether that was going to be a safe place to live. And we've had to work a lot with our partner institutions overseas, with our recruitment agencies, putting together things like that safety video I mentioned earlier, just to show that we are still just as welcoming, if not more so, than we used to be. Now, of course, it's also concerning that whenever our country hits a possible roadblock, that other countries are quick to capitalize on that. And I know just from conversations I've had with my colleagues, places like Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, they're really capitalizing on this. Maybe not the United Kingdom quite as much as Canada and Australia. Canada in particular has seen a large increase in student interest and in students planning to take their studies there because, again, they are considered to be much more welcoming. In addition, they also have policies in place that make it easier for international students then to possibly apply for citizenship or to work or to do things like that. I did want to share in this slide, there was an IAE survey. I don't know if you've seen this information or not, but this past summer, earlier this summer, a survey went out to colleges and universities through IIE. 40% of the surveyed universities have experienced a decrease in application for fall 2017. And then a breakdown then in particular of some of those countries that they're seeing fewer applicants from. And I know they mirror some of what we're seeing, but not to that extent, but we have also seen some decrease in our applications on our campus as well. So it's certainly a situation where we're concerned about that and where we're trying to take every step that we can to reassure those students and putting more money into recruitment, into communications, to make sure that those students understand that they still have a welcoming place to come to. The following slides, as we wrap up, the following slides are some screenshots and some web addresses of some of the websites that we found very helpful when dealing with the executive order and trying to find the most current information to share with our international students. So one that we used quite a bit, quite a lot, and still use as things develop would be the American Immigration Lawyers Association website. NAFSA itself is usually a treasure trove of information on anything related to international student issues. And this particular link, when the executive order first came out in March, this was a site that had almost minute-by-minute updates on what was going on with the courts, how the challenges to that executive order were being implemented, who was doing what. This was something that we shared with our students. That way they could see exactly what was going on and had the most current and up-to-date information. They weren't relying on their friends or relatives to share that information. So in the event that things like this come up, really do recommend, and in fact, most of your institutions probably have folks on staff who are NAFSA members. I'd suggest you work with them to get that current information to share with your graduate students when needed. Department of Homeland Security. Of course, this website is where the actual verbiage of the executive order and other developments are posted, where they take place. So it's always a good idea to follow along with that as well. And then I wanted to touch briefly again on the NAFSA Economic Value Tool. This is just showing what you will see when you access it. As you can see below, you can pull up data by your state, by your congressional district, and it can tell you exactly what economic impact international student enrollments have on your institution and on the local community. Back when we were putting on the informational sessions for our international students, in all of those cases, we invited our local lawmakers to attend, and in all of those cases, they sent representatives from their office to get this information and to take back and share with our legislators. And then this is just an example of what you will see when you drill down and look at your specific congressional district. As you can see, Missouri S&T, we had $36.5 million in revenue for our region and supporting 589 jobs. And then also I shared some information about our Missouri S&T YouTube channel. I'm sure many of your institutions engage in social media and in YouTube videos, things of that nature. We have a number of videos that we share, including that safety video, videos of Celebration of Nations. But we think it's very important to have a dedicated channel in order for our incoming students to see all of the different ways in which we work to try to support them. And so we think it's very important to highlight that as well. Venkat, do you have any final comments before we turn things over to the question and answer period?
Bill, I think both of us, as we had talked before, would like to really thank CGS for their leadership in And thinking about this webinar, it was their idea to put this on. And what I heard from Hero is there is a lot of interest. In fact, he mentioned, and Hero, you may want to chime in, 100 plus registrants for this webinar. So at least it shows that there is a lot of interest in this topic. And the more we share experiences between our universities, we can learn from each other.
Definitely well said. As we move into the question portion of the presentation, I'd also like to add that it's not just 4 questions. If you have a best practice that is occurring at your university, please feel free to share that as well, and we'll be sure to address it. But at this time, I'll turn things over to Hero, and he can give us any questions that may have came up to this point.
All right, thanks, Venkat and Bill, for very informative presentations. A lot of resources for all the folks at the graduate schools to tap in if you're not familiar with, and of course, thank you for very good description of how at Missouri Science and Technology, the graduate school and the international student office work together, not just in response of the current events, but also at the ongoing basis. So if you have questions, please write in to the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. And yes, the recording and the slides will be emailed to the attendees and posted on the member portion of the CGS website. So the first question is, I think this is on the minds of a lot of people, but what are some of the specific plans of action that you might have around the arrival support? You know, we hear a lot about uncertainty around the extreme vetting of the visa and uncertainty at the border, the ports of entry. But at the Missouri Science and Technology, do you have some sort of plan that, how you might assist prospective international graduate students arriving in the United States and who may face some type of difficulties?
Sure. And this actually is a standard procedure for us, because this process, even prior to the executive order, there are always a number of steps in the process where students can face difficulty. So in our case, we have very clear lines of communication. We have people specifically set up to answer questions at any hour of the day. If a student has an issue, if they come into a port of entry and face whatever it is that they're calling extreme vetting now, which I'm sure we're all going to be more familiar with as this first group of students comes in for the fall. But we stand ready to assist however we can. I know personally I've toured our St. Louis port of entry, and I've spoken with the officials in charge of that port of entry, and received information from them about ways that our students can travel and be less likely to be detained. Everything from just a positive attitude and having documents together, doing things like that, which surprisingly, no matter how much we work with our incoming students, some still don't always know that those are crucial things to do. But if one of our students has an issue while they're in transit, we do have people that can help address that issue. We also have things like transportation from the airport that will help the students get to our campus. It's not something we're really that unfamiliar with, since the whole process of getting a visa and coming to the United States has never necessarily been an easy process. So I think most international offices, hopefully anyway, most international offices have some of those services in place. And so as a graduate dean, I think it's important that you have a good line of communication with your international office, if you have one on campus, that is coordinating the arrival assistance and things like that, to work closely with them to find out exactly what they're doing to support your students who are coming in.
Okay, great.
And Bill, just to add one more thing, we also have things like pre-departure orientation program, and this is done as a webinar between the grad school and the international office. And we also get in the Council of Grad Students officers. So they are also part of the pre-departure orientation. So we know who are the people who have been admitted. We are in constant touch with them. So we send out an email, webinar information and such. And we have a number of such pre-departure orientation webinars. And that's very helpful for incoming students.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Venkat. I neglected to mention that.
Okay, so the next question, so in the same line of students coming in, do you offer electronic pre-orientation module or information you share with the international students to help with acclimation? And if yes, would you be able to share some information, what type of module or communication strategy you have?
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that, as Venkat mentioned, we do have that in place. And I think as technologies develop, we are always looking at ways to make that easier to deliver. Obviously, anything that we currently use, I'm certainly comfortable in sharing that information or giving examples of what we do. And again, NAFSA and CGS, these organizations, they have wonderful resources that they can share as well.
And then actually, when you reference the OPT-CPT project that you and your staff did, it was a wonderful example. Initially, we used to have students come and do it face-to-face. They had to make an appointment with an advisor, go over the material, and then apply for OPT-CPT. But now this is available electronically. Students can take the self-assessment test, pass it, and so it's streamlined. So they don't have, it's fully electronic. So that's sort of an example of something that was done to help our students.
Yeah, it's a great system, and it's nice because not only does it give the student a better background of what they're trying to do, it also helps our staff. Like most schools, we have a small advising staff, and so this way they're not as tied up with the face-to-face seminars and things like that. Right now we have the online assistance. We also have one face-to-face seminar that we'll put on, and where our goal is to eventually not have any more face-to-face seminars, to just have everything completely online.
Bill and Venkat, do you have?
There's a lot of it's like drinking information through a fire hose. There's just so much information given out. So we try to just minimize some of those things, just touch some of the highlights, and then keep in constant communication with our students and update them depending on their milestone they cross.
Bill, do you have the name for that online module you use, just so that people can kind of look it up?
Sure. Yeah, actually, it's something that was created on our campus, and it's through Canvas. If an institution is using Canvas for course delivery and grading and things of that nature, it's actually a short webinar with a quiz added to it that we put together there. So yes, I can share a link to that. But if you have that on your campus, or if you use things similar to that, there should be ways that you could create that on your own.
Great. So you touched on in the presentation you mentioned about the Celebration of the Nations, as an annual community event that you on campus. But do you have any other ideas of what to give or show during the university events to show the appreciation, show your appreciation for international graduate students?
Yes, we have a large number of events. In fact, each cultural group has their own celebration. We have an overall organization that represents international students as an entire group, within each of those groups, like our Indian Student Association, our Chinese Student Association, our Saudi, our, literally broken down country by country, depending on the population. And, these activities and celebrations and events occur, roughly on almost a monthly basis. And in addition to that, our office puts on luncheons, welcoming celebrations, a welcome picnic, several different events throughout the semesters that are specifically designed for international students. And of course, domestic students are welcome as well. But yeah, we put a lot of effort into putting on programming that our international students appreciate. And in many of those cases, the international students take an active role in putting that together. We have some wonderful celebrations on our campus. It's a fun place to be.
Good. So how about, beyond the social interaction, do you use peer mentors to support international students? If so, how do you identify and engage those student mentors?
I'll probably let Venkat talk a little more about the graduate end of that and the advisement. He's probably more familiar with that than I am. Just from a point of view as far as immigration advising and just general advice, our office does provide those in a traditional manner. Appointments and helping students figure out issues on OPT and CPT and things like that. But I know from a graduate point of view, it's very important to have those mentoring relationships. And I think Venkat can probably speak more to that.
Right. And so I'm the primary administrative officer of our campus for anything about graduate grievances, academic design, any of the graduate issues. And, so one of the things we want to do is try to be more active and less reactive. And of course, we would deal with cases related to advisory conflicts and such, but we would like to minimize those. And so what we do is we put in a number of panel sessions, faculty in the panel sessions on topics like how do you select your advisor, how to make things which are implicit a bit more explicit. Many of the international students may not have had that very clear to them, in the sense they are maybe shy, they don't feel comfortable challenging their advisor in a right way. And so we help them quite a bit through those panel discussions and such. But again, there is a lot of things that still needs to be done. Mentoring and coaching is such a huge area. We really do not touch a whole lot of people that we would really like to touch at the SIT. It's an ongoing thing that we would like to do more of.
So this question goes back to the earlier one about the arrival, but when you're admitted students or denied a visa, what can you do to assist them, and how would you counsel a newly admitted student whose visas have been denied multiple times?
Well, it's a discouraging and a very challenging situation to work through. One of the things we have to do, of course, is educate our students that we don't really have any special way to reach out to the embassies and the consulates to advocate on their behalf. I think one of the biggest things we try to do as an institution is to give them as much support and information on that visa process, and also to have a very robust and fairly strict admissions process where the students provide the most accurate and current information to get that admissions decision, because when they go to the embassy, they then will have credentials and they will have proof of acceptance here that will look better to the consular officer maybe than something that's not as detailed. Now, unfortunately, again, though, if a student goes and if they're denied, we'll work with them. We'll work with them to try to determine if it was something that the student did. Maybe it was something that they said, because we know most everyone involved in this process knows that it's a very short window, just minutes that you have to make your case. And sometimes it can seem quite arbitrary on whether a person's granted a visa or not. We try to do everything on our end to not only prepare the student to be successful at that interview, but then to provide whatever information is required in order for them to try to apply again. I know, in my career, I've went as far as to, send information directly to an embassy. And sadly, in many cases, that doesn't help. That doesn't work. Maybe one or two instances in an entire 20-year career where doing something like that actually helps the student. In most cases, they don't have the option to do that. So I guess in the end, we do whatever we can. We do anything we're able on our end to assist. But sometimes, sadly, that's just not enough.
So
one of the things that I have done, at least in India, is when we go out for recruitment, I visit the U.S. embassies in major cities, and each of those embassies has what's called a USCFI, United States Educational Foundation of India. And so these are offices within the embassy, but they provide information about education, higher education in the U.S. And so talking to them about Missouri SND, specifically our school, and then saying that, this is a very solid school, this is the history, it just helps the educate, hopefully these officers to differentiate a good school from a bad school.
I know right now in Washington, there's the Education USA Forum that's going on. We've sent some of our staff there. Those folks will meet with advisors, educational advisors, who in many cases are affiliated with the USCF and who have offices sometimes adjacent to or in embassies and consulates that provide advisement for students who are applying for a visa. In fact, some cases even going as far as to vet academic credentials and do things like that. So it's that's a great point that Venkat brought up, that using those government offices, that it's not necessarily by any means a 100% success rate that if you go through them you'll get a visa, but you're certainly going to be more well prepared for that process by using them.
So we have 5 more minutes, and I think we might be able to fit one last question. So looking at the onward, what would be effective strategies in the recruiting international students in this climate, especially after the travel bans and the extreme vetting and other conversations are happening?
Sure. I think obviously having a robust recruitment plan that has a number of different recruitment type of activities in your toolkit, whether it be working with some of your faculty or staff that have connections with those countries that you're recruiting from. I know Venkat does extensive recruitment in India, and his contacts and connections there are wonderful, and they provide many students who come to our campus. Looking at using educational agencies, putting together MOUs and agreements with institutions in other countries, recruitment fairs, they're just a list of things that programs can do. And I think right now programs really need to redouble their efforts to get through what could be a few years of a downturn. But things are cyclical, and I think in many cases going out and engaging in those activities, not giving up on them and putting more resources toward them, puts an institution in a stronger position and allows them to get out and face those challenges and be successful in the end and move forward. But I think you have to also have a very robust communications plan in place, quick turnaround on applications, which I know in graduate admissions can sometimes be challenging when there are departmental decisions that have to be made, but working to try to get those decisions made as quickly as possible, There are just any number of things that, whether you have a huge recruitment budget or whether you're just doing more of what you can handle just on your campus, there are a number of things that you can do, I think, that will help your yield and help increase those successful applicants. But it really takes a good comprehensive look at the whole system and the whole strategy in order to do that. And I know Venkat has probably a lot to say about this.
Well, I don't have to. I said a lot. One of the things I think I want to point out, the point that you mentioned before, is some of the things that we do collaboration between our units is not in response to the recent executive action. We've been doing this all along, and I'm blessed to have colleagues like you, Bill, at other units. And so we work really, really well. And a lot of good things happen when collaboration happens naturally. And I think that helped us quite a bit. We already had things and projects in place. Irrespective of this executive order, we already had thought about operationalizing or putting the OPT, CPT on a webinar fashion. So these are all projects that we've been taking all along.
Okay, great. I think that's it for our time. Again, the webinar recording and the slides will be emailed to the participants and posted on the CGS member portion of the CGS website. Thank you so much for Venkat and Bill for presenting this. Our next CGS webinar will be on September 27th. That'll be sneak peek of the 2016 CGS GRE Graduate Enrollment and Degrees Survey. So stay tuned for the registration information for that webinar. Thank you again for taking time and tuning into today's CGS webinar, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.